Sandra Goudie. Sandra is joining us online. Good morning, Sandra. Thank you for joining the committee. We have you for 10 minutes this morning, so I'll invite you to begin your presentation.
Thank you, James. I'll just launch straight into it. There is actually no authoritative copy of the Treaty of Waitangi Principles as stated in writing in 2023 by the then Attorney General David Parker and reiterated by the then Prime Minister Chris Hipkins. The government refers to principles in law but cannot produce them. And a sad truth is that we need to establish principles of the Treaty of Waitangi because we cannot trust the government to uphold the rule of law and ensure we are all equal in the law. And that's the government's greatest treaty breach of all. The government should not continue to ignore the broader responsibility of the Crown in its representation of all New Zealanders as a party to the Treaty of Waitangi. There is no partnership, as some Māori would have you believe. That is merely an attempt to exclude non-Māori from the dialogue. And the latest discussion paper from DOC is a classic example of the neglect around principles. Rather than amend the Conservation Act Section 4 or establish treaty principles, the current government is going to entrench prejudicial bias in favour of Māori on the pretext of their giving effect to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi blunder. Queen Victoria's Royal Charter of 1840 declared New Zealand an independent colony of Australia and established a democratic parliament. That preceded the Treaty of Waitangi. One could argue that it is the Royal Charter which is the founding document of New Zealand and not the Treaty of Waitangi. Regardless, Queen Victoria reinforced the rule of law in both documents where all were to be treated equally and at that time as British subjects. In spite of that, there is now an unprecedented emphasis in favour of Māori within the law, giving rise to an unacceptable level of expectation, privilege and growing demand for more by some Māori commensurate with a growing hostility and lack of respect for others. The Y262 claim, alongside the He Puapua document, is driving to entrench the idea of a partnership with the Crown to the exclusion of all non-Māori, undermining both the rule of law and our democracy. Breaches of the rule of law and thus Treaty of Waitangi obligations are the reason we need principles that support and are consistent with the rule of law. Non-Māori as treaty partners do not have a Waitangi tribunal to go to if they feel affected by any perceived prejudicial bias arising from any action of the government, but Māori can. While we must absolutely resolve historical treaty claims, the Treaty of Waitangi Act Section 6 allows Māori to challenge any action of the government on a continuing basis, demanding more and more of our hard-earned taxpayer dollars and preeminence in the law, contrary to the rule of law in the Bill of Rights Act. We each of us have our own tikanga, our own kaupapa and our own matauranga. These things are not exclusive to Māori. They are just Māori words whose meaning can be applied to anyone. There should be no special privilege in law for consultation, payments, or requirements for agreements. There should be no special privilege in law over anyone else's private property. There should be no coercion of any kind in any form to have to accept someone else's cultural paradigms, tikanga, kaupapa, matauranga. The days of handouts for resource consents and at building sites should be over. Other provisions for Māori in the RMA are totally unacceptable and a major breach of a Treaty of Waitangi statement on the rule of law and also the Bill of Rights, with any objections or concerns falling on the deaf ears of successive governments. Non-Māori have no Waitangi tribunal. This is why the rule of law should be applied equally and not give special protection to only the thinking, the tikanga, the kaupapa and the matauranga of Māori. Ignoring the definitions or meanings of words does government officials and parliamentarians no credit. The Ministry of Justice and the Law Commission should know better. We need principles to avoid the growing chasm swallowing hard-earned taxpayer dollars. The Waitangi Tribunal is lobbying government to establish a specific fund dedicated to Treaty of Waitangi claimants. Couple this with Section 6 of the Treaty of Waitangi Act, whereby Māori can challenge any action of the government on the basis of prejudicial bias, and taxpayers are gifted with a gravy train of demand, eating up hard-earned taxpayer dollars better spent in health, education or policing. DOC is always crying poor, but millions of their dollars are being paid out on 35-year Ngā Whenua Rahui grants to Maori landowners and other grants payments. Just shy of $500 million spent on the Labour Party's creation, Te Ara Whiti and Māori development for the 24-25 financial year, plus many more millions over the 4 years, and the list goes on. Not to mention the huge millions and millions of dollars spent prior to that. No wonder we cannot employ nurses with so many having to leave the country. Maori businesses only pay 17.5% tax. Other businesses pay 33 to 39%. And to top it off, the Ministry for the Environment said it would accept retrospective claims in regard to the Waitangi Tribunal kaupapa inquiries. New Zealand cannot afford this gravy train. It is time to do the right thing. If the government does not establish principles of the Treaty of Waitangi consistent with the rule of law, then every reference to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi must be removed from all legislation and regulation, with the original statement, have regard to the Treaty of Waitangi, being all that is required. It should never be left to the courts to decide. Parliament fails in its fiduciary duty when it does not uphold the clarity and efficacy of the law along with the rule of law. Parliament must delete Section 6, 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the Treaty of Waitangi Act and introduce a sunset clause for the conclusion of historic claims and thus the Waitangi Tribunal, or allow non-Māori to make a claim against breaches of the treaty by the Crown. And where a treaty settlement condition affects a constitutional, governance or Bill of Rights matter, a referendum must be held at the election following enactment of the settlement, by which the public can vote to uphold or vote down that provision. I support the referendum and principles of the bill.
Thanks, Sandra. We've got 3 questions lined up. First from Todd Stevenson, then Tampa Paul, and then Kushla.
Hi, Sandra, and thank you for your submission. There was a lot in that. I suppose just to come back to one of your earlier points, it seems to me, and you gave a lot of examples, but it seems to me because the principles of the treaty haven't been defined, and you mentioned actually former Attorney General and the Leader of the Opposition making similar comments. There is no authoritative copy of the principles. Is it your submission that that's what's led to a lot of the issues you've raised? It's just this uncertainty?
It's not uncertainty. The government cannot produce any principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. I have asked for them in writing. I have been given a written response back from David Parker and Chris Hipkins. They cannot produce them. So if you're going to write a reference to principles in law, you should be able to produce them. That's a requirement, a basic fundamental requirement of the clarity and efficacy of the law, which the government has consistently failed to honour. And without those principles, you're going to start getting the sort of disgruntlement or an unequalness within the law that's currently happening, and it's getting worse. And we can't afford it. People don't understand the amount of money being spent here.
Thanks, Sandra. We'll go to Tamitha Paul, probably last.
Kia ora, ata Māori, Sandra. My question is, your submission just now and this one in writing is all about Māori, and I just wanted to ask, what qualifies you to speak about Māori? Do you have an area or a qualification or a lived experience to speak about white people?
My own life experience gives me the right to actually speak about any matter or subject that I so choose to.
So it's your life experience.
I do it with all respect.
It's your privilege.
Checks out. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. I'd like to extend the committee's appreciation for you being.
An apology from my colleagues.
And appreciate your time. We are
Don't
going to
apologise to me. You got no right to speak for me either. No, you do not.
That won't be the only
No.
thing you
Don't
apologise for.
apologise to me.
I
Apologise
am.
for this.
You don't have the right to
Okay,
apologise to
thank
me.
you.
All right? I'm just letting you know that now.
Waititi, if you continue, you won't have a long time here in the committee this morning and one of your colleagues can have fun instead. Okay? Everyone's going to calm down a bit. Follow the instructions of the chair earlier on when I asked supplementary questions.
Yeah, but I have nobody speak for me, Mr. Chair.
I'm speaking,
Just
I'm
letting
making
you
a
know.
ruling on the disorder that was just caused by the committee.
Yeah.
If it continues, members will be asked to leave the room and their colleagues can enjoy the rest of the day instead of them.
What's a genuine question?
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next submitter. The next submitter now is